This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Bruchim Aboy and welcome everyone. Shalom Aleichem. Welcome to today's special National Agra de Pirka Shiur. Today is Tu B'Shvat. I want to begin by saying that all the Shiurim on Chodesh Shvat are dedicated by the Israeli family, Lo Nishmas, their father, Meir ben David, whose yahrzeit was Chas Shvat, the Neshama Shav and Aliyah, be a male tzir for the whole family, for Simcha Sanachas, Ad Biyasko El Tzedek. Shalom Aleichem everyone. It's great to see you. Today is, of course, Tu B'Shvat, Haba Aleinu L'Toiva. And in honor of Tu B'Shvat, in honor of Parshas Yisro, I want to speak about the following subject. The Haggadah for Art Scroll was submitted, and it is going to print as we speak. If anybody still wants to be mishtatif, please let us know. Let us begin by focusing on the name of this week's Parsha, Parshas Yisro. This week's Parsha is Parshas Yisro. And Rashi tells us Yisro had 7 names. And let's study some of his names. Rashi says, Yisro had 7 names. Why was he called Yeser? He added a Parsha to the Torah. Why was he called Yisro? Because after he converted and he was Mekayim the mitzvahs, they added a Vav to his name. This is one of the most mind-boggling comments in Rashi. Why is he called Yeser? Because he added a Parsha to the Torah. Why does he have an added Vav? Because he was Mekabel all 613 mitzvahs. So in the Sefer Ma'orei Sha'arim was written by Rav Aryeh Zev Gorowitz, the Rosh Hashiva of Gateshead. Hence Ma'orei Sha'arim. He has a Sefer Roshei Sha'arim, as Gateshead, Roshei Sha'arim. But he asks a Pella Atzuma. He says, let's try to weigh this for a minute. The man has a name with 4 letters. Yud Taf Reish is for one thing he did. Vav is for another thing he did. So you would expect that 3 of the letters came for the more important thing, and the 1 letter came for the less important thing. And he did 2 great things. He was Mekabel 613 mitzvahs. He became a Yid. He went from being a Goy to a Yid. And the other thing he did is, he said a Chiddush in Torah. His Chiddush was, he comes to Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe, you're going to tire out. It's not covered for Klal Yisrael that you should sit and they should stand. So he added to the Torah, V'yata sechazeh mikol anshecha ayel. So he did 2 things, 2 great things. Number 1, he was Mekabel Taryag Mitzvahs, and he elevated himself from being a Goy to being a Yid. And the second great thing is, he said a Chiddush in Torah. So which do you think is more important? I think we would have said the greater of the 2 was he was Mekabel 613 mitzvahs, and he extricated himself from being a Gentile to being a Yid. And the other thing is, he said a Chiddush in Torah. He said, you need to appoint Dayanim. But yet Chazal tell us he's called Yeser because he said a Chiddush in Torah, and he got a Vav from elevating himself from being a Goy to a Yid. Says the Gateshead Rosh Hashiva, from here we see the nuclear elevation that comes to a person who's immersed in Torah, that he could be mechadesh something in Torah. Being mechadesh in Torah brings greater aliyah, is a greater elevation than even from turning from a Goy into a Yid, greater than elevating yourself from being an Akum, an Oived Koichav Ma'azolois, to being a Yisrael. Greater than that is being Mechadesh something in Torah. How could that be? How could that be? Says the Gateshead Rosh Hashiva, Reb Gorowitz, V'hu Pliya L'chayra, Ki B'shvil Sheyiter Parsha Achas B'Torah, Nasnu L'Shem Chadash L'Gamri. He added to the Torah, they gave him a completely new name. Uchshenes Gayer, when he converted, V'kiyem Kol HaMitzvahs. When he converted, it was Mekayim the whole Torah. They added only 1 letter. Says the Gateshead Rosh Hashiva, Royin anu ba goydel achilak sheba al yedei shemoisiv davar ma b'Torah. we see the great distinction in man if he could add something to the Torah. Because Torah is equal to all 613 mitzvahs. Torah is even greater than the 613 mitzvahs. So you say, okay, so then it should come out someone who learns Torah is equal to someone who keeps the 613 mitzvahs, or someone who learns Torah is greater than someone who keeps the 613 mitzvahs. But Yisro was already Mekabel all 613, including Talmud Torah. Why did he have this much greater aliyah when he was Mechadesh? He's called Yeser because he added to the Torah, and he added a Vav only when he accepted the 613. And the rationale, says the Gates at Rosh Hashiva, is Kiner mitzvah v'Torah ar. Mitzvahs are like a candle. The Torah is like the fire. A mitzvah is not even like a lit candle. It's a ner without the light. The Torah is the light. Just like there's no comparison between a lamp that has no light and a lamp that has light. But when a person is mechadesh something in Torah, his entity becomes one. It is fused with the entity of the Torah. He is elevated, transformed, catapulted to a completely different stratosphere. Because if Yisro added to the Torah, so that means he understood, based on certain Seichel Hayashar, he was able to extrapolate and apply Torah rationale and extend it to a new circumstance, so he himself became one with the Torah. But when a person does a mitzvah, it does not elevate a person nearly to the same stratosphere. You could shake a lulav, wear tzitzis, blow the shofar, put on talis, put on tefillin, light Shabbos candles, be mafresh challah, give tzedakah, and it won't do to you anything close to learning one Mishnah, learning one line of Gemara. You could be Mekayim, listen carefully, because this is not an exaggeration. Learning one word of Torah brings a person more elevation than fulfilling the other 612 mitzvahs. That's one word of Torah. And the Gates Rosh Hashiva quotes Rav Dessler in the Ksavim, that mitzvahs are called levushim, cloaks. Torah is called bread. Torah is likened to water, to wine. Rav Dessler explained, a mitzvah does not become part of your entity. Therefore it's called levush, like a beged. But Torah is absorbed, it's fused, it's intertwined, it's nivla into your bloodstream. It becomes part of you. And therefore it elevates you in a much more profound way than mitzvahs do. But says the Gates at Rosh Hashiva, Chazal tell us that at first it's called the Torah of Hashem, ki im b'Torahs Hashem cheftzai. And then it's called Uv'Soyrasa, your Torah. At first the Torah is called the Torah of Hashem. In the beginning, when a person just learns it and it doesn't enter your heart and your mind, it's also just a lavush, it's a cloak. But after you learn the Torah enters your system, it becomes you become identified with it. This is the greatest source of aliyah. And when I saw this Rashi this morning, I said how wondrous it is that the opening Pasuk in this week's Parsha tells me and teaches me about the importance of not just learning Torah, but being able to be absorbed and immersed in Torah, where you're able to be mevin davar mitoich davar. Because we know davar yafeh, davar be'itay ma yafeh. Something in its appropriate time, how beautiful it is. And everything that occurs during the week is alluded to in the Parsha of the Shabbos. And if the Parsha of Yisro is teaching us Yeser about the great importance of Chiddushei Torah, This is very much connected to the Yom Tov of Tu B'Shvat. I want to share with you an ancient custom reported in the ledgers of Minhag Yisrael. It's called Sefer HaMinhagim of Varmaiza. Now, interestingly, Varmaiza, we call it Garmaiza. Rabbi Lezer of Garmaiza. The Chida brings a legend that originally it was called Garmaiza. But there was a worm there, a dragon, that would consume a person daily. Until one tzaddik decided to go into the dragon, and he vanquished the dragon from within, and they named the region, they changed it from Garmaiza to worms, Varmaiza. Actually, in the Sefer on Tu B'Shvat, they did not want me to put in this legend, because they said it was of German origin. But I said, no, not true. If you look in the Svarim of the Chida brings it and authenticates that this is the reason why it's called Varmaiza. So they said it's not in our edition of the Chida. I said, well, you have to have the right edition. It's in my edition. So I showed them the authentic edition of the Chida, and they allowed me to put it in. So anyway, that's the story of where worms gets the name. So in the Sefer Minhagim of Varmaiza, he brings the original custom on Tu B'Shvat. It was Yoima de Pagri, de Mepagri, Be'Rabanan. Meaning, the students were lazy. They wouldn't come to the Beis Medrash. Especially the children. It was a Yom Mishta v'Simcha for the Rabbeim, for the Talmidim, and you would give the Talmidim Yayin Saraf, you would give them alcohol. So, Ephraim, could you maybe change the background, maybe make a bar or something, so we could send everybody the proper Mishta and the proper beverages? But the minhag of Tu B'Shvat is the Rebbe provides the Talmidim with delicacies and Yayin Saraf, a little schnapps, and that's the minhag brought down in Varmaiza. This goes back a few hundred years. In fact, in the Sefer Minhagei Varmaiza, he brings that on Purim, on Tu B'Av, on Tu B'Shvat, it's Yom de Mefagri Be'Rabanan. The students would not come to the Beis Medrash, they would stay home. And Rav Asher Weiss, in his Minchas Asher Sichos on the Mayadim, wonders what kind of minhag is it not to go to the yeshiva on Tu B'Shvat. I mean, I understand the children were probably very happy on Tu B'Shvat because they didn't have to go to yeshiva. Maybe they would wish each other Mazel Tov or something like that because they didn't have to go to yeshiva. But what's the meaning of that? Why wouldn't you go learn on Tu B'Shvat? Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. What kind is it? It's not even a Yom Tif. You just don't say Tachnun. What's the minhag of this ancient custom? So Rav Asher Weiss develops really a spectacular idea. We all know the Gemara tells us on the pasuk that when you're setting siege to a city, you should not destroy a fruit tree. The Torah says, "Ha'adam eitz hasada." Is the tree a man that you should kill it? Ha'adam eitz hasada. Is the tree a person that you should kill it? But the Gemara, Chazal always say that the pasuk could be read not as a question, but as a statement. Ha'adam eitz hasada. Man is like a tree. That's how we usually interpret the pasuk. There are similarities between man and a tree. And the Kuzhuglaver Gain, the Eretz Tzvi, Chelek Beis, he brings that if man is like a tree, then if on Tu B'Shvat, most of the sap rises in the tree, well, man is a tree, and his fruits are his Chiddushei Torah, and the sap that rises in man are the good rayonos and the good ideas. In other words, if the same way Tu B'Shvat is the Yom Tov, is the new year for fruits, then we know that there's an idea everything in the physical world is a manifestation of the spiritual world. So if Tu B'Shvat is the day that the sap rises in the tree for the new fruit, then Tu B'Shvat must be a special day, like a new beginning in Chiddushei Torah. And in fact, the Kuzhuglaver Goin brings in his Shalos Teshuvos, Chelek Beis, Drushim, Drush Aleph, from his Heilige Rebbe, the Sachet Shavar Rebbe, The Iglei Tal, I told you, my grandmother's father was the last Rav of the city of Sachachav. So he was a Talmud of Shem Shmuel. Shem Shmuel was the Rebbe of Sachachav. Shem Shmuel's father was the Avnei Nezer, the great Paisik. He wasn't the Rav of the city, he was the Rebbe of the city. And the Avnei Nezer, the Iglei Tal, was also Rebbe of the Eretz Tzvi. The Iglei Tal writes that every year on Tu B'Shvat, he was margish, a shinoi, a distinction, invigorating freshness in his Chiddushei Torah. Because when we say that if Tu B'Shvat is Rosh Hashanah La'ilan, then it's a Rosh Hashanah for Chiddushei Torah. In other words, if Tu B'Shvat is a day that most of the sap rises in the tree, we know we have many Gemaras. The Gemara says that Rabbi Yirmiyah said to Rabbi Zera, could you teach us something? So Rabbi Zera would say, I'm very weak, I can't teach. So Rabbi Yirmiyah said to Rabbi Zera, so teach us some Agadata. So Rabbi Zera said, this is what Rabbi Yochanan said, Ki ha'adam eitz hasadeh. Is a person a tree? So he would say, it says, Ki mimenu soichal, v'yoisoi loy sichras. One pasuk says you should eat from the tree, and one pasuk says you should cut off the tree. So the Gemara says if he's a Talmud Chacham Hagun, eat from him, learn from him. If he's not a Talmud Chacham Hagun, then don't learn from him. But again, we see many times throughout Shas, let's say in Avodah Zarah, eitz refers to Torah. Priya eitz is the Talmud Chacham Ha'isik b'Torah. Where the Gemara says, why do we bring an Egla Arufa in the valley? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you take the Egla that didn't produce fruits, and he should be killed in a makom that doesn't produce fruits for somebody who left this world without making peiros. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? The person didn't. What does fruits mean? Periya v'rivya. So that means if a zakein was killed, who can't be Mekayim Perivirvia, or a Sris was killed, who can't be Mekayim Perivirvia, so then the laws of Egla Rufa don't apply. No, Peiros mean a person's mitzvahs. So in that case, Rabbi Isai says, Rav Asher Weiss, this day, Tu B'Shvat, is Mesugal. If it's Rosh Hashanah La'ilan, Rosh Hashanah L'Peiros, we should daven that we should be Zoicha, for Hatzlacha in our Limadat Torah, in our Masim Toivim. So let's take a moment. We're Mispat HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hashem should give us the intellectual capacity and the ability and the health and the opportunity to be Zoicha for Talmud Torah, to be Zoicha to understand the Torah, to understand new insight in the Torah, to be Zoicha to Mekayim Mitzvahs properly. That is what Tu B'Shvat is predisposed for. So says Rav Asher Weiss, a Chiddush Nifla. You know what the meaning of the minhag, the ancient custom of Armaiza, why the Talmidim don't go to yeshiva on Tu B'Shvat? Talmidim don't go to yeshiva on Tu B'Shvat because normally the way a student grows, the way a Talmud has aliyah, is he goes to the Shiur of the Rebbe, and he listens carefully to the Rebbe's Shiur, he prepares for the Rebbe's Shiur, he reviews the Rebbe's Shiur, what did the Rebbe mean, why did the Rebbe say this, he's working on the Torah of the Rebbe. No, not on Tu B'Shvat. Tu B'Shvat is the Rosh Hashanah for Peiros, for Chiddushei Torah. We tell the student, no, don't go to yeshiva today. Today you have to develop your own Chiddushim. Today you're not going to sit by the Rebbe. Today you're not going to harva over the Rebbe's Torah. Today is for your Torah. It's Rosh Hashanah lo Ilana. It's like the Avnei Nezer said on Tu B'Shvat, he would be margish, a masikus, a hischadshus in his Chiddushei Torah. Because a person is like a tree, and a person's insights are his peiros. So it's a new opportunity for a person to cultivate and develop their own Chiddushei Torah, and that might be the minhag behind the custom in Varmaiza. It wasn't chas v'sham to have a day of batlanos. It wasn't a day of atzlos. It was to take advantage of the segulas hazman to be able to cultivate one's own chidushim in Torah. By the way, it's very interesting because this could give us insight into another event that happened on Tu B'Shvat. So, Marv Rabbi said, now we understand why Parshas Yisro, the Parsha of Tu B'Shvat, opens that Yisro had 7 names. For being Mekayim Torah mitzvahs, all he got was a Vav. But for being Mechadesh something in Torah, that he got a Yud, a Taf, and a Resh. That was even more notable. That was even more significant. This is the week of Chiddushei Torah, the week of Tu B'Shvat, Rosh Hashanah Lo Ilonos. It's when the Saraf is Oile in the eights, and everything in the physical world reflects the spiritual world. So if the sap in the inner trunk of the tree is Oile to eventually produce Peiros, so too in a person's being, the Rayonos are Oile into the Mayach to be able to produce Chiddushei Torah. It's very interesting. We know that Mishpat, Mitzrayim, Yud Beis Chodesh. The Mishnah says in Idyos that the Mitzrayim were judged for 12 months. Now, what Makkah happened when? We don't know exactly. However, we do know Makkas B'chayros happened on Tesvav Nisan. The Sefer Chamra Tava of Rav Barnav, who's one of the great Hasidic masters of the Ramazim of the Torah, he brings from the Kedushas Levi that the Makkah of Barad happened on Tesvav Teves. And in that case, the Makkah of Arba happened on Tesvav Shvat. Which would then mean that Choshech happened on Purim. Now, if the Makkah of Arba happened on Shvat, that must give us some clue into the defining characteristic of Tu B'Shvat. After all, if you want to know the root of a day, the essence of a day, we have to look in the Torah of the first recorded events that happened on that day. So if the Makkah of Arba happened on Tu B'Shvat, then there must be some deep connection between Makkas Arba and Tu B'Shvat. And over the years we've said many times that the Makkah of Arba was a very unique Makkah. It's the only Makkah that it's not recorded in the Torah that Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu what the Makkah would be. By every other Makkah, Hashem tells Moshe, go tell Paro there's going to be blood. Go tell Paro there are going to be cacophonous frogs. Go tell Paro there's going to be lice. And then the Torah says, and Moshe told Paro what the Makkah is. Comes the Makkah of Arba. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe boy el Paroi. Go to Paroi. Yeah, and do what? God never tells Moshe what to tell Paroi by Makkas Arba. It's the only Makkah that God does not give Moshe any information. So, the Ramban is bothered by this kasha. And the Ramban says, well, we could figure it out. Because it says in Yoel that Alecha Lebanim, Alecha Levanecha Tisaperu. And it says, by Arba, Ulamahan Tisaper, Ba'aznei Vincha. It says a lashon of Tisaperu. So that teaches you, just like by Yoel, by the Arba it says there never will be Arba like that. So Rashi's bothered, what do you mean in times of Yoel there was? So Rashi said in times of Yoel there was a variety of 4 Arba that we never had before, and in the times of Mitzrayim there was one type of locust, and that the proliferation of that many of one type we also never had before. Comes the Kol Simcha. That's Reb Simcha Bunema Parshascha. And he says, there are a number of questions on Arba. Why is it that by Makkas Arba, Paroi says, Chatasi Lashem v'lachem, I sinned against God and you. This is the first and only time Paroi ever says to Moshe, I've sinned against you as well. Why is Paroi conceding he sinned against Moshe? Earlier he said, Hashem hatzadik, va'ani va'am yarashayim. He conceded he sinned against God. But what does Moshe got to do with this? Furthermore, Arba is the only makkah where Hashem says, Eis asher hisalalti b'Mitzrayim. With Arba, Hashem made a mockery of Egypt. How is Arba a mockery of Egypt? Says Reb Simcha Bunim Parshascha, Arba, in fact, is the only makkah that Hashem did not tell Moshe Rabbeinu which makkah to bring. He said, you decide on the makkah. It's up to you. You create the makkah. You be mechadish the makkah. So Moshe, using the koyach of Torah Shabbat Peh, the koyach of Gezerah Shava, he said, well, it will say by Yoel, Alech levanechem tesaperu, and it says Leman tesaper. So Moshe darshaned Arba. By the way, Rav Simcha Bunim says, because Paroi said, Pen Yirbe, so Moshe said, Pen Yirbe, Arba, Taka Arba. Or maybe the Chassam Sofer says, Hashem tells Moshe, Boy El Paroi. Take the letters Beis Aleph and put it in Paroi. So we'll substitute the Pei with a Beis. We'll substitute the Ayin with an Aleph. So if you take the word Paroi and you change the Beis to a Pei, the Pei to a Beis, and the Ayin to an Aleph, you get Arba. So Moshe took the letters Pei, Reish, Ayin, Hey. He exchanged the Pei for a Beis, the Ayin for an Aleph, and he made Arba. But Moshe used the koyach of the Chachamim, the Torah Shabbat Peh, to create Makas Arba. So therefore, Hashem says, Arba is the biggest mockery of the Egyptians. Because I'm letting you play with them. You created, you innovated, you made it up, you originated it. So that's why it was a mockery. It's not like I told you, tell Paroi, this and this is what is going to be. No, you make the makkah. So therefore it was a mockery of the Egyptians. And that's why Paroi concedes, Chatasi l'Hashem aleikeichem lachem. This time, I've sinned not only against God, but I've sinned against you as well. By the way, I once heard from Harav Agoin, Rav Nachai Zekobam Shlita. That's why the Baal HaTurim points out by Arba, it says, Vayonach ha'arba, the Arba rested. And where else do we have Vayonach? Vayonach bayom hashvi. Says the Baal HaTurim, from here we learn out, the Arba rested on Shabbos. Well, Sabbath observant locust. That's a new one. I heard of Sabbath observant Jews, but now Sabbath observant locust? Yeah. Why? Because who is Mechadesh Shabbos? The Medrash says Moshe was Mechadesh Shabbos. He went to Paroi. Moshe wanted to give the Jewish people a day off, so he goes to Paroi. He says, if you work them 7 days a week, they're going to burn out. They're going to not be able to produce for you. Give them a day off. So Paroi said, great idea. So Shabbos in Mitzrayim was a Chiddush of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's why the Rishonim say, we say in davening on Shabbos, Yismach Moshe b'matnas chelkai. Moshe rejoiced in the Shabbos because Hashem obviously concedes. Hashem endorses your Chiddush of Shabbos. So since Moshe was Mechadesh Shabbos, and Moshe was Mechadesh the Makkah of Arba, so the two Chidushim are sort of fused together, and the Arba rested on Shabbos. What do we know that happened on Tu B'Shvat? Makas Arba. What was Makas Arba? Makas Arba was the Chiddush of Moshe Rabbeinu. Chiddushei Torah. It is no coincidence that Tu B'Shvat is the day of the Makkah of Arba. Because what is the main purpose of Tu B'Shvat? To celebrate the sap that rises up in the tree for the new crop. No, ha'adam eitz hasadeh. That's just reflective. It's an analogy to man. That's when the new ideas start flowing. That's when a person, it's a mesugal for Chiddushei Torah, like the Avnei Nezer said. He was margish, a mesikus, in his Chiddushei Torah, beginning on Tu B'Shvat. Let's read those holy words again. Ki b'chol v'admar hagodol bal iglei tal zecher tzadik v'kolish levracha l'chayo elam haba omar ki b'chol shana achar Tu B'Shvat margish shinoi b'chidushei Torah shalai hine de'ikar Rosh Hashanah le'ilan. The main Rosh Hashanah for trees is going on Chidushei Torah. It's no coincidence then, says Rav Asher Weiss, that they would give the Talmidim off on that day. The message is, it's always very important to learn from the Rebbe. And you always have to continuously learn from your Rebbe. But there's also a very important makom for one's own Chiddushei Torah. And therefore, it's very significant that the day of Tu B'Shvat is the day of Makas Arba. The day that we recognize the greatness of the power of Chiddushei Torah, that we learn from Moshe Rabbeinu. Hashem told Moshe by Makas Arba, Boy El Paroi. Moshe said, do what? Hashem says, I'm leaving it up to you. That's the koyach of this day. The koyach of the 15th day of Shvat is the koyach of Chiddushei Torah. So Moshe utilized that Chiddush. And therefore the Parsha of Tu B'Shvat, is the Parsha of Yisro, that Roiv Oisiyosav is not because he became a ger and he converted and he was V'kabel all 613. Roiv Oisiyosav comes from the fact that he was Yiter Parsha Achas B'Torah, he was Mechadesh in Torah. So let's think a little bit about Arba. Arba is the only makkah that affected Eskol, Esav, Hasada, the Eskol, Pri, Ha'etz. None of the other makkahs affected the trees and the fruits. They affected the water, the air, the land. Arba is the only makkah that affected the eitz and the peiros. Why? Because Arba happened on Tu B'Shvat. Says the Chamra Tava, the eitz and the peiros of the Mitzrim were destroyed on Tu B'Shvat. But Ulcho B'nai Yisrael, their eitzim and their peiros remained fresh, lush, sweet. If the Mitzrim's peiros and trees were destroyed, then the trees and the fruits of the Jewish people were blessed. And in fact, on Tu B'Shvat, God blesses our peiros. And most importantly, when we say God blesses our peiros, God blesses our ability to have new insight into the Torah, deeper insight into the Torah, fresh insight into the Torah. And that, Rav Asher Weiss suggests, is the reason for the custom of the Talmidim not going to the yeshiva on Tu B'Shvat. So, I'm going to leave you off a little bit early now so you could go be mechadesh your own chidushim. I'm going to wish you a wonderful day. Afrei lechem Tu B'Shvat. Bracha v'atzlacha. We'll see you be'ezus Hashem next Monday. Kol tov. Have a great day.
Thank you. You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.